You're listening to the Cashology Podcast by FNBO, a place dedicated to helping you become more financially savvy every day. It's a little like school, but your only homework is living your best financial life. I'm your host, Justin, and class is now in session. So you're in your 30s now. It feels like all the fun is over. You're starting to go to bed on time. You don't know why, but part of you actually enjoys going for a run or a yoga class every day. And you're eating right, most of the time. But then there's the hard part of your 30s, getting serious about money. And it's the perfect time, too. You're entering the prime years for building wealth and preparing for life after working. Sound financial decisions today in your 30s will pay off not just at retirement, but all along the way. With us today in this episode is Mikaela Blocher, a financial advisor with First Investments in Planning based out of Kansas. Mikaela's been at the bank for a little over 20 years and has a wealth of knowledge in navigating your finances. So I'm really happy to kind of share this podcast with you, and I really hope you enjoy. All right. Welcome, Mikaela Blocher. So Mikaela is a financial advisor with First Investments in Planning based out of FNBO's Kansas market. And Mikaela is here to talk to us about managing money in your 30s. So welcome, Mikaela. Thanks for joining us.
Yes, thank you. So excited.
So as like a real quick question, you're a financial advisor. What is a financial advisor? What do you do? What's your like day-to-day kind of look like?
Yeah, so great question. So my day-to-day really consists of a few different things. So right now, with it being the end of year, following up with clients, making sure that we've made all of our year-end contributions to different retirement accounts or different strategies, taking any taxes, loss harvesting off the table as well. And then working with clients throughout the year on meeting different financial goals. So whether that's helping them plan for a big purchase or helping them get out of debt or looking at different investment options. And then, from just coordinating everything as well from titling on accounts and insurance needs. So there's really a lot that goes into being a financial advisor. But one of the ways that I really kind of view and my job is, the client is the CEO president of their household. I am the CFO. So they come to me and ask me, and I help them with financial guidance and making good money decisions. Very
cool. I love that. I've never really considered myself as kind of like owning my own business, but like, hey, if I get a financial advisor, I'm kind of like my own CEO. I like that analogy. That's great.
Yeah, absolutely. And so again, the customer is the one that's in control. I just help them make good business decisions based upon their financial situation.
Very cool. So let's just like get this kicked off. Let's talk about a few things. So based on what you see, what's the biggest mistake people in their 30s make with money?
I think one of the biggest mistakes I see, and not with people in their 30s, is not saving for retirement or not saving or having an emergency fund for themselves. So I find a lot of people, and even in the older age groups that have not started saving for retirement. And the sooner you start, the better off you are. And so being diligent, once you get that first job, even if you're in your 20s, your 30s, whatever it is, as soon as you can start paying yourself and paying for your future, paying for your retirement, the better off you're going to be. Because the longer time, you've got more money to grow for you.
Absolutely. And to add on to that, talking about retirement, what I also like to recommend to my friends, like this episode for me is kind of bittersweet. I'm going to be turning 30 here soon. So I'm saying goodbye to my 20s and I'm talking to my friends that are, in the same place as I am. And one of the things that, I would add on to it's important now to be thinking about retirement is, especially in my friend group, it's important for us to be talking to one another about money. And right, like it's kind of like this taboo topic, but I have like a diverse group of friends and we all come from like different walks of life, different places, and being able to talk to one another about finances, money, investing has been super beneficial for us. Just because, we all get like unique snippets of different ways to kind of do things. And it's nice to know that, you're not alone in that journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And, I think that there's definitely a lot of really great education out there. Talking to your friends, using your group, using your network and really trying to set yourself up for it's not going to be a quick process. It's going to be a long process to save for retirement and to save and meet some financial goals. But to save yourself up for a good process and making sure you're being thoughtful and diligent along the way, and that you're well diversified too. So not just having retirement, not just having everything into a 401k or an IRA, but looking at an emergency fund, looking at making sure you've got assets outside of any qualified money as IRAs or 401ks. And then also making sure that you're taking advantage of programs out there that, your workplace might provide you, or different benefits that you might receive. Because if you're not, you're leaving free money on the table, and not taking advantage of those, which is so helpful, especially when you're starting young, to build that retirement fund.
Okay, Mikaela, so let's get started managing money in your 30s. Give us the high level overview. For someone in their 30s, what money moves should they be making?
Yeah, so a couple things to focus on is making sure that you're paying off debt, especially any high interest debt, like with credit cards, student loans, maybe too, really paying attention to what you're paying on each loan. Because there is some good debt out there and there's some bad debt. So, maybe paying off a mortgage doesn't make sense right now. But if you can pay off a couple smaller credit card bills that are at higher percentage rates, that really helps overall. So that way you'll have more money for savings and for longer term investments, or even just an emergency fund as well. Another thing that in your 30s, I think you should be looking at for sure is reviewing your employee benefits package and insurance coverages. Making sure that everything's in place to protect against any large medical expenses or any unexpected expenses as well. Reviewing any employer-sponsored benefits at your enrollment period too. So that's a big topic right now for a lot of folks as we're heading into enrollment season. And then, taking advantage of different opportunities or different benefits that your employer offers. I mean, because if we're not, then, obviously we're just leaving money on the table, and nobody wants that, especially if it can help us with our long-term goals. The other thing is, just making sure that you've got proper life insurance in place too. We never know what's going to happen. And so we want to make sure that we can manage as much as we can while we're here. So that way, if something does happen to us, our loved ones aren't scrambling or need additional help.
Oh, absolutely. So yeah, I think when I think of like employer benefits that they offer, the immediate thing that comes to my mind that's been like pounded into my brain, especially working at the bank, is, check that 401k. If they offer a retirement plan, a 401k, usually employers have like the employer contribution, figure out what that minimum contribution rate is and make sure you get that match. Because I think you said earlier, it's like that free money that's sitting on the table. So
yeah, it is free money. I mean, you're already working there. And so if you can afford to put more into your 401k, I think that's great. I think if you can do that, I think that makes a lot of sense. I also think it also makes a lot of sense that you're at least matching to what the top benefit that your employer will receive will give to you. And then, also look at investing outside of your 401k. So looking at maybe a Roth IRA, looking at if you have an HSA, maxing out your HSA, because those are two products that can really help you down the line, mitigate taxes. Something to just really think about as you're looking at your full financial picture.
Absolutely. Great tools to kind of have in your tool belt. So it kind of sounds like, right, we're talking checking your debt. There are things like good debt, maybe focusing on retirement, looking at employer-sponsored plans, life insurance, kind of setting yourself up kind of for success. It's almost like we're playing defense so far. So what if you're in your 30s and you've already gotten these things covered? What should you be doing?
So taking advantage of what you can, right? So your 401k, I would also take a look at any Roth IRAs. So Roth IRAs are great because you can contribute money that you're paying taxes on now. So that way down the future, when you pull those monies out for retirement, you're not taxed on those funds. So what that means is you're paying taxes generally probably at a lower amount today than what you would in the future. Another thing, a benefit of Roth IRAs versus traditional IRAs. So traditional IRAs are using non-tax funds. So you're taking taxable income and putting that into an account to pay taxes at a later date. And so putting money into a taxable IRA or a traditional IRA, you're eventually going to be taxed on those funds. And so the one thing that we know that's going to happen are taxes and debt. And so eventually, today's current law states that at 72, you have to start taking those distributions. Well, at 72, you might not need distributions from your IRA, but you're going to be required to start paying those taxes. Within a Roth, you don't have that requirement. And so what you can do is keep the money in a Roth, and you're never required to pull that money back out. So that's a great way to start looking at different ways if you've got, just the basis covered. Another thing that you can take a look at doing is funding an HSA. And so one of the reasons people use HSA or health savings account is on a lot of high deductible health plans, you can put money in there pre-taxed, and you don't have to spend it right now. So if you could put money into an HSA, like I said, and not use it, and then come down the road, you can take that money, submit receipts from today, pay it yourself in 20 years, and then use that money to, go on a cruise or whatever it is that you want to do. So yeah, it's a great vehicle for building wealth, especially with the fact that it's non-taxable funds. If you use the money for reimbursing yourself for health expenses, you're not taxed there, and you're not taxed on any earnings. So it's a great tool to be able to have that flexibility and saving the money that you are today. Now that's current tax law, so who knows what will happen in the future. Sure. But it's something to think about.
Yeah, people should definitely always be consulting with tax advisors on a lot of this stuff, because laws, regulations can change, and the advice the things that we're talking about today might not necessarily hold true tomorrow.
Yeah, and I think another really great thing that people can do is so you're doing all the things, right? So you're maxing out your 401k. Maybe you're contributing already to a traditional IRA outside of that. Maybe you've got a Roth happening, and maybe you've done all these things. You've already got your emergency fund set up, so that's good. It's just creating a traditional brokerage account. I mean, there's nothing wrong with just a traditional brokerage account, building those assets outside of retirement, building those assets that are already taxable, and then, having that sort of mid to long term or maybe medium size bucket here for savings. So there's a lot of different things you can do with just, kind of making sure that you understand your own expenses and your own budget. And then really what you're paying now, how that might benefit you down the road.
Yeah. So for our listeners, kind of what is a brokerage account? And, maybe not just our listeners, maybe even for me as well. So are we talking about the stock market now? Is that kind of where we're going?
So talking about the stock market, is opening just a general brokerage account. So, you can take a look at doing different things. And there's a ton of different strategies, and working with a professional financial advisor will really help in this situation and figuring out what makes the most sense for you. There are a ton of different strategies. There are a ton of different stocks. There's a ton of different mutual funds, but really coming down to what's going to help you meet your goals and reward you for the amount of risk you're taking on. Not taking on too much risk where, you can't sleep at night because the account goes up and down, or, knowing that, okay, I can put my head down tonight knowing that I don't need these funds for another 10 years. And historically, the market always goes up. So therefore, these funds should be too. So, there's a lot of different things.
Absolutely. And kind of going off of that, the things that we're talking about, like 401ks, IRAs, HSAs, it's just like a lot of moving parts. And now we're moving into what I would think of the scary zone of, the market. And so I think your endpoint there is people that are in their 30s now, reaching their 30s. It's probably a good time to start finding a financial advisor to kind of help navigate this crazy jungle of all of these options, and making sure you have someone there to help set you up for success.
Yeah. So finding a great financial advisor is important, a part of this process. If you think about things that have happened to you up until this point, maybe you have left a few jobs. Maybe you've got some stranded 401ks out there. Maybe you've got a upcoming wedding. Maybe you're having a baby. Maybe planning to buy a house, going on a big trip. So there's different ways or different things that are always happening to us in life. And, what a financial advisor can do is really help us plan for those things. So, if you think about buying a house, well, if you're going to buy a house, you shouldn't be in the market. You should have that cash ready because you want that saved and knowing that you're going to have that in the next 6 months or whatever it is that you're going to buy your house. If you're going to have a baby, maybe it makes sense to take a look at a 529 plan. Start saving for college. Start looking at down that road. Because we all know that the cost of school is getting more expensive.
That's true.
So like I said, a little we can do now, a little here and there really adds up down into the future. It can really make the difference for anybody you're helping with those goals.
Yeah, I think a financial advisor can really help navigate and provide much needed insight. And, I kind of live with this motto, right? You don't ever have to do anything alone. I think we're kind of conditioned, at least here in the US, kind of conditioned of being individualistic and pull yourself up by your bootstraps kind of a mentality. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but, sometimes things are just hard and complicated and you don't have to do the financial journey alone. You can find someone to talk to.
Yeah. And there's so much to the financial industry and the financial advisory world. And that really finding a good professional that you feel comfortable with.
Sure.
That gives you advice, that's proactive will help your journey and make a huge impact.
So I think I heard a few things there. So let me just get your opinion, Mikaela. If you're entering your 30s or, someone, what kind of characteristics, qualities would you recommend someone look for in a financial advisor?
There's a lot of different financial advisors out there in the world. I would say, finding one you feel comfortable with, finding one that's not pressuring you to do one thing or another, but offering you guidance, offering you education, explaining to you the process into why we're going to go through certain things or have certain conversations, and making sure that, that you understand and that they're explaining to you how they get paid and that they explain to you their compensation too. Because I think it's important to know, are they receiving income based upon certain... It's
kind of are they getting paid just to get me into the door, or...
Correct.
Is there a vested interest, right? We're in this
Correct.
Together? Got it.
Yeah. Yeah. So is there... Yeah, exactly. So is there, are they getting paid per product they sell me, or, what's in it for them? Finding a good financial advisor, that one that, you have a good relationship with, you can talk to them and you can be open with them too, because that's the other piece on my side is, I can only help you if I know, right? So if I don't know, if you can't tell me everything, you don't feel comfortable telling me everything, then maybe we're not a good fit.
Oh, that's a good call. Yeah. So maybe if a financial advisor is listening to this podcast, hey, maybe you could own that relationship too, of if as a financial advisor, you don't see that connection, kind of let that be known and kind of own that relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, if there's not that connection, and I think between the two, I think I think they'll know pretty fast.
Okay, so at the start, I kind of talked about a little of how having friend groups and being able to talk about money, right? The conversation of being able to talk to one another, share off of lived experiences. And we kind of just get off this topic of how it can just be so hard and difficult, especially navigating this space. So why do you think it's so hard for people to talk about money? Maybe not just people in their 30s, but just in general. Why do we find that topic so difficult to talk about?
Well, we were always taught, you can't ask about money or religion or politics. So
true.
I think it goes back to that. But I will say, you don't have to share everything that you talk to people about. If you find a good article on different reasons or different investment ideas as far as, Roth versus traditional IRAs, or should you open a brokerage account, or different ways to build your wealth, I think those are great resources, and I think sitting down and talking to those that are closest with you, so that way they know your financial goals. So if you have a spouse or a significant other, or, just having those conversations, just so you're all on the same page, so if you've got one, maybe one spouse that's a spender, one that's a saver, there could be some battles down the road. So knowing kind of what you're up against as far as your budget and your goals and, what worries you, and just making a priority to understand and know your finances, because you never know what can happen. right? So none of us are invincible.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And, kind of what you had just said made me think of a question that was asked to me by a friend. And so me and my wife have been together for a long time. And so we actually, we had a friend ask us, so they've been in a relationship, I think, kind of like coming up on 1 year. And they kind of asked, hey, when did you two start talking about finances? So just like off the cuff, like what's your recommendation for like people that are like in a newish relationship? When is a good time to like even mention finances or bring up money in a relationship?
Yeah. So I would say if you're casually dating, probably not. But if you're starting to maybe meet each other's families, friends, and getting more serious, I think that's a good starting point. If you do find somebody that you love and that it has a lot of debt, I mean, that's something that you're going to have to take on too, or something that you might have to be more considerate of in the future. I always laugh because I've always told my husband, Bobby, and we've been married, it'll be 12 years this year. When we first met, that I was like, I was going to pull a credit report on him because it's important. I mean, it's a big thing for me. And so, obviously in my household, I maybe we'll expect it. I'm the one that handles all the finances.
Sure.
Now that's me having to chase him down sometimes too and say, I need you to sit down. I need you to know where things are and what's going on. But it's important to have those conversations. And, even if you're not 100% on the same page with how finances are, you have to be open and you have to be thoughtful, because it's one of the top reasons people get divorced. It's one of the top reasons, for issues.
Totally. Yeah, I can say that me and my wife, we have a standing monthly touch base, if you will, where it's just like a check-in on where are we at on our budget. Let's get back together, and are we on the same page of our financial goals? Right? Are we saving for travel? Are we saving for like a big expense or something like that? So I think what you're saying is, I think that has been really successful in my marriage. And I think it's super important, just kind of like in any relationship of, if it's serious and you need to be talking about money, kind of setting that time aside. And my wife's advice was, if you're just starting the conversation, kind of sharing what your thoughts on money are. So wherever you are in life, like what are you prioritizing? Are you prioritizing travel? 20s, 30s, you're probably doing that. Really kind of understanding what the priority there is, I think probably like at least a nice toe in the water type topic to at least get that conversation, that dialogue going.
It's an important conversation. And I would even throw in there too. I mean, if you're going to be the caregiver for your parents one day, making sure where their accounts are and how those are set up, and making sure that
Yes.
Not only do you have knowledge of where everything is, but you're listed as financial power of attorney, healthcare power of attorney, whatever that is, executor of their trust. So that way you can help in those situations too. If you're that designated person, and some people don't know if they are or not, but if you suspect it could be you, then asking, because you could be banging your head against a wall trying to figure out what's going on, when you could easily have a conversation too, especially with that older generation who's not so great about talking about money and some of these things. So I would suggest that as well. So not even just your spouse and your friends, but your parents.
Normalize the dialogue of finances with your loved ones. I think that's great.
Correct.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Mikaela, for joining us. If someone has been listening and is interested in reaching out, talking to you directly, how do you recommend they get a hold of you?
You can call directly, or you can email and set up an appointment with my assistant.
Fantastic. We'll make sure hopefully we can get your contact information in the podcast show notes for anyone looking to get a hold of you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes. Thank you. This was fun. Thank you so much for having me.
Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender. Podcasts are for informational purposes only and not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations. When making decisions about your financial situation, consult a financial professional for advice. Podcasts are not regularly updated and information may become outdated. Deposit products are offered by First National Bank of Omaha, member FDIC. Investment products are not FDIC insured, not a deposit or other obligation of the bank, not insured by any federal government agency, not guaranteed by the bank, may lose value. Securities offered through Raymond James Financial Services, Inc., member of FINRA, SIPC. First National Bank of Omaha and First Investments and Planning are not registered brokers or dealers and are independent of Raymond James Financial Services, Inc. Investment advisory services offered through Raymond James Financial Services Advisors, Inc. The Cashology Podcast, copyright First National Bank of Omaha. The foregoing information has been obtained from sources considered to be reliable, but we do not guarantee that it is accurate or complete. It is not a statement of all available data necessary for making an investment decision, and it does not constitute a recommendation. Any opinions are those of the speakers and not necessarily those of Raymond James. Every investor situation is unique, and you should consider your investment goals, risk tolerance, and time horizon before making any investment. Prior to making an investment decision, please consult with your financial advisor about your individual situation. 401k plans are long-term retirement savings vehicles. Withdrawal of pre-tax contributions and/or earnings will be subject to ordinary income tax and, if taken prior to age 59.5, may be subject to a 10% federal tax penalty. Matching contributions from your employer may be subject to a vesting schedule. Please consult with your financial advisor for more information. Contributions to a traditional IRA may be tax deductible depending on the taxpayer's income, tax filing status, and other factors. Withdrawal of pre-tax contributions and/or earnings will be subject to ordinary income tax and, if taken prior to age 59.5, may be subject to a 10% federal tax penalty. Like traditional IRAs, contribution limits apply to Roth IRAs. In addition, with a Roth IRA, your allowable contribution may be reduced or eliminated if your annual income exceeds certain limits. Contributions to a Roth IRA are never tax deductible, but if certain conditions are met, distributions will be completely income tax free. Links are being provided for information purposes only. Raymond James is not affiliated with and does not endorse, authorize, or sponsor any of the listed websites or their respective sponsors. Raymond James is not responsible for the content of any website or the collection or use of information regarding any website's users and/or members.